Let me do a quick intro. It's a cliched thing to say, but it is true. Our guest today does not require an intro, but I'm going to give him one anyway. Kevin Smith. He is a VFS alumni and now ambassador, a trailblazing director, podcaster, influencer, the godfather of geekdom, vegan's men's health model, battler of airlines, savior of the Rio Theater, and a self-deprecating hockey fan. The man should be Canadian. It's amazing he's not. Let's give a warm VFS welcome to Kevin Smith.
Hey kids, how are you? And when I say kids, I realize we're all adults here, man. But everybody's younger than me these days. So hey kids, happy to be here. Wish we were all together doing it. That was the original plan. VFS, of course, as most of you know, is my alma mater. It's where as I wrote on Twitter, it's the crucible in which Clerks was formed. If I don't go to VFS, I don't meet Scott Mosier, I don't meet Dave Klein, and we don't ever get together and make Clerks. And years after I dropped out of VFS, they were kind enough to give me an honorary diploma, which hangs proudly in my house, but I took it down to show you guys here. So just like you guys, I too was a VFS student, and just like you guys one day, I too got a certificate saying that I was there, man. They claimed me as their own. So it's an honor to be here, man. The long intro or the titles and stuff was flattering, but the one that like hit my ear the best was he saved the Rio. I take great pride in that. I remember when they launched their campaign, like they were hitting up, of course, like Ryan Reynolds and Seth Rogen and stuff. But like I threw down with like, I'll do 2 shows, man. So they named a seat after me in the theater. They're lovely people. We were just up there for the Reboot Roadshow tour.
When we heard that you were coming in to save, we knew we were in good hands, and we thank you for stepping in to do that. Appreciate it. And now, so during this chat, we're going to go all the way back, right? We want to know.
Vancouver Film School enters my life while I'm working at the Quick Stop, the same Quick Stop from Clerks. And we get the Village Voice. To set the scene, Leonardo, New Jersey is about as far as you can get from the action. It's only about an hour to drive into Manhattan and stuff, and that's where the action is for sure. But even as far as Jersey action goes, Leonardo is a little town, quite like Highlands, little town I grew up with, that is far away from the madding crowd and stuff. True suburbia. So we got magazines and newspapers because we were a convenience store. Kids, if you don't know what a magazine or a newspaper is, it's how we used to consume our media before the internet. So one of the newspapers we received was the Village Voice. Village Voice was kind of like the Georgia Strait. Can you grab that and just unplug it? Was like the Georgia Strait of New York, or we used to say the Georgia Strait was like the Village Voice of Vancouver. It was like the city paper, the one that told you where all the cool things were going on and stuff. So in the Village Voice, we'd read it every week because they had great reviews for movies. Jim, but we didn't know his name was Jim. It was just Jay Hoberman was the critic. So you didn't know if it was a guy or a girl and stuff. And the reviews were never like thumbs up, thumbs down. They were essays about the movies. Let you draw your own conclusions. We got to see all the cool movies that weren't playing where we lived, but playing up in Manhattan instead. And eventually we would start driving up to Manhattan to see these cool movies. But there was always in every issue of the Village Voice, and this is really just a testimony to the power of good marketing. There was a film strip looking ad on the side, the right-hand side of the page of the Village Voice when you open up in the film section, rightly placed because anyone looking there would be like, ooh, and looks like a film strip. And then it said, be a director, but don't take 4 years or something like that. And it was an ad for the Vancouver Film School. And what was most enticing about it was that it had a 1-800 number. So I was like, that's a free call, man. So I'm working at Quick Stop, at the actual Quick Stop from Clerks. And, one night I call from the payphone, the same one that Dante uses in Clerks, the 1-800 number, and I'm like, I would like to get an application package. And they said, oh, absolutely. They sent me one. I filled it out. I think like the admission fee, it wasn't much, maybe $40 at that point, maybe 50, maybe 200. I think Sundance was 200. I think the application fee at the VFS was 50 to $100. But I had that in my checking account. It was cheap.
It's gone up a little bit since then, yeah.
No doubt. So I send in my application. They're on the essay, which I just posted on my Instagram. They asked you to write some stuff about, like, why do you think you'd be a good director and stuff, answer a bunch of questions. And so I, wrote an essay and sent it in with my check. And then I got accepted. And I was like, oh my God, this is nuts. I've been chosen. They can recognize from my essay that I am a filmmaker, even though I've never made a film in my life, never made a short or anything, but they could sense it in my words and stuff like that. I was blown away. When I got there, I found out, this was early in the school's life, we were class 25. Pretty much everybody that applied got in. They just put them into the next class if you didn't get into that one. So but I didn't know that. Little ignorance goes a long way, man. So I was like, oh, I knew it. Chosen by the universe. These Canadians, they haven't even seen me, and they know that I'm a filmmaker. So I was so delighted. And then I went to tell my parents. This is where the story goes weird and stuff. Because originally I didn't know it was Canada. My mom I sit my mom and dad down and I say, I know I tried to go to college once up in New York, because I did. I tried to go to the New School for Social Research, and then I dropped out. So I said, I know I've dropped out of a school, but I found a school that I want to go to, and it's a film school, and I applied, and they said yes. So I'm gonna go. And my parents like, where? And I said, it's the Vancouver Film School. And my mom goes, Vancouver? She goes, that's really far, Kevin. That's the other side of the country. And I said, no, it's not. It's right above Massachusetts. It goes like Pennsylvania, Massachusetts, Vancouver, right? And then you're into Canada. And my mom goes, you're thinking of Vermont. And I was like, oh, wait, so where's Vancouver? And she goes, Vancouver is on the other side of the country and in a whole different country. It's up in Canada. And I was like, what? I applied to Canadian film school? Like, that's so far away. And it was so uncharacteristic that I would go so far away or go anywhere far away from my home to try to accomplish anything. But it seemed like the path. Like, it seemed like, look, I don't have time to go to a 4-year film school, but I could go to this program. It's like 8 months, 9 months. I get in and out. I'm going to learn how to use equipment. That's all I want. I just want to know how to use this stuff so I could come home, teach my friends how to do stuff. We could all make a movie together. So I decided to go for it in a very uncharacteristic move, because I was not a wanderlust kid and stuff. I was like, I will go, and went to the other side of the country, first to my uncle's in Washington, then drove up to Vancouver with my brother, which was crazy because it was right like a month after my mom outed my brother to me. Like, one night I come home from Quick Stop and my mom goes, sit down, Tiger, I have to talk to you. And like somebody died. And I was like, what's the matter? What happened? And she's like, it's about your brother. I was like, what is it? And she's just like, he's gay. And I was like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. Like, she thought it was like we were all going to be sad, me and her. And I was like, no, good for him. I was like, you know what? I went to visit him one time, and him and a dude were watching a movie, and they were sitting suspiciously far apart. Now I know why and stuff. So she's like, you can't tell your brother that I told you that. This is something I shouldn't have even told you. My mom can't keep a secret. So I was hurt because I was like, why wouldn't my brother tell me? We were super close. We shared a room for years and stuff. He's 4 years older than me. I'm born on his birthday. We share the same birthday of August 2nd. So we're driving to Vancouver to go to film school from my uncle's house. My brother takes the trip with me because he was more worldly than me. He'd been to college and stuff. So he was going to drive up with me, look for an apartment. We did get an apartment in Gastown initially and stuff. So as we're driving up from Seattle to Vancouver, the whole ride, I'm like, I'm going to talk to him about being gay. Like, I got to find out why he didn't tell me and stuff like that. And the whole ride, I can't find a way to bring it up and stuff. And so we crossed the border, in like Blaine or wherever, and right past Blaine. And then we're headed to Vancouver, and I see the skyline, so we don't have much time left. So with Vancouver skyline in sight, I say to my brother, he's driving, and I was a passenger. I turn and I'm like, so I understand you have an alternative lifestyle? And my brother started laughing. He's like, that's one way of putting it. And he's like, how'd you know? I was like, Mom told me. He's like, fucking Mom. So I said, why didn't you tell me, man? I thought like we were tight and stuff. Were you afraid that I would be against it, that I'd be homophobic or whatever? And I didn't say homophobic because we didn't have that word back in 1992. So he was like, no, it just never came up. I was always looking for a moment and stuff like that. And then I started quizzing him on what he did. That's where that Chasing Amy scene with Alyssa and Banky comes from, where Banky's asking all the questions and stuff, except it was me asking my brother. But that, when I think of Vancouver, and I think of Vancouver a lot because my journey to Clerks begins there. Vancouver and the VFS particularly are the gateway to the rest of my life. Like, the person who went to Vancouver was Kevin Smith, that I haven't seen in a long time, a dreamer that I almost don't even recognize anymore. But who left Vancouver was this Kevin Smith, the one that has been like making Clerks and doing stuff for all these years. So that city, I identify with not just the beginning of my career, but the beginning of my life, my second life. It was like, you know, being rocketed off Krypton and landing on Earth and being Superman, although nobody treated me like Superman, of course. But you know, everyone in Canada's polite, so they treated me real nice and stuff. So I love the city in a big bad way. And so I went up there to go to the film school because I was like, I'm gonna learn how to do this, come back, tell all my friends. And then I only made it into the about 4 months into the program. I met Scott. Me and Scott hung out hardcore and whatnot. My first boyfriend, so to speak. We had the exact same sense of humor, sensibility and whatnot, and same movie references. So, you know, I saw him when I first got into the first day of class 25, which was February, I want to say February 1992. February 7th, 1992, I think that's when I went up. Yes, because then I came home by July. So I see Scott Mosier for the first time. Now, mind you, Scott Mosier is the holder of the keys to all my dreams come true. He's the muscle, the actual work behind everything I did in the beginning. I'm an idea man going, wouldn't it be great to make a movie set in a convenience store? Scott was the guy that figured out how to do that. And my first impression of the most important person I'd ever meet for the rest of my life was like, look at this 90210 pretty boy looking fuck. Like, he came from LA. He was originally from Port Moody. He was Canadian as fuck. But he was dual citizen because his parents, one was up there, one was down there. So he had spent time down in here in Los Angeles and went to a film school and actually worked like in a studio for David Permit as an assistant or an intern or something like that. So when he came in, it was, do I still have you guys? Yeah. There it is. When he came in, he looked more American than I did. I was dressed up in the Silent Bob coat, and I was wearing a Malcolm X baseball cap that Spike Lee had made for Do the Right Thing. Not for Do the Right Thing, for Malcolm X, but I bought it from Spike's joint and stuff. Made me feel like a real director. So I, you know, and I was just rebelling against everything. Scott looked like he could have been Luke Perry's brother on 90210 and stuff. And so one day we got into a conversation. We wound up in a project together in the class, and we made some joke about, I said, when this is done, we should have our post party at Spago's. And he thought that was funny, and he understood the reference to Spago's, which was a famous restaurant at that point and stuff where all the stars went in Hollywood. And suddenly we clicked and got along. And like when I left film school, I left not because like this school sucks, like the school was totally fine. I just didn't have any money. And when I got there, I thought I was gonna go make a movie, and we made a short, Mayday, which we had a blast doing. But then when it came time to do the class projects, this is a lesson in lack of self-confidence. How it was designed, I don't know if it still runs this way, is they pick 4 scripts, and then even if they pick your script, you're not necessarily guaranteed to direct your script. So they could pick 4 different directors from 4 different scripts. And so that for me was like, well, wait a second, man. If I'm gonna stay up here and I'm paying my tuition and I'm not even guaranteed to get a screenplay done or a film done, like, I don't know if I could do this, man. So I went to speak to Richard Appleby, who was the head of the school at that point. I said, look, I'm from no means whatsoever. I borrowed money to come here off my cousins and stuff. So, like, if I were to drop out, do I get any tuition back? He goes, if you drop out by the midway point, you get half your tuition back. He said, but a day after that, we keep the rest. And so I had a decision. It was 3 days. And I had written a script that, you know, definitely wouldn't have gotten picked. I know that in my heart. It was about, they bring the president, the newly, you know, elected president and stuff, into a secret room with a toilet in it, and then they leave him, and then the toilet talks to him and tells him all the important things about the world. You know, just real film schooly kind of shit. So
I would have made that. That sounds like an excellent script. You're selling yourself short.
Nobody would have made that. They would have been like, puppet toilet, move on, kid. Go back to Jersey. So right then and there, I weighed a certainty against a doubt. And I said, I'm certain that I could like take the half of the tuition and take it home and put it into a movie. And I doubt that they're going to pick my script. So I didn't have any self-confidence. Scott had written a script called Willem Black. Like I took the name for characters in my movies later on. His short film, Willem Black, is very clever and very like film noir and stuff. It got picked, but he didn't get picked to direct it. Somebody else directed a script. So that was after I left. I was sitting there going like, is my script good enough? Am I going to get a shot at being one of the screenplays? And if I don't, I'm going to be crushed because I came here to be a writer. And then I know I'm not good enough as a director to direct somebody else's screenplay. So like, what am I going to do? So there it was. I was like, I had it was 3 days to make a decision. And I didn't even call home to my parents. I was just like, you know what? Like the only thing that kept me from saying, oh, I'm going to leave right now was I was terrified of going home because I knew everybody at home would be like, hey, Hollywood, you're back? What, are you back already? I thought you went to Hollywood. Did you go to Movie Maker? What happened, film school? So that's the community I come from, very negative. So I was like, I don't want to go back and get, negated by everybody I know and total strangers and stuff. But then I said, you know what? Fuck those people. And fuck the idea of somebody telling you, like, you failed. Failure is if I didn't make a movie. That's what I kept telling myself. I said, look, you got something of an education, you got some basics, and you met some important people, man. And like Scott was like, if you're leaving, he's going, I'm gonna graduate in 4 months. Whoever makes a movie first, we'll go work on each other's movie. I was like, sold. So I knew I had backup. I knew I'd had help and stuff. So I said, all right, I'm gonna go home, tail between my legs, as far as everyone else is concerned. But I know that I'm gonna make a movie. I couldn't let myself off the hook. If you're gonna leave this, if you're gonna leave the sweet spot, you gotta go work. It's that simple. So I started writing Clerks in Vancouver while at the Vancouver Film School. The scene where Randall is on the counter and the lady is like, I don't think you paid any attention at all. He's like, I don't appreciate your ruse, ma'am. That scene was written in Vancouver. The dream begins there. And then I had to go home in order to kind of make it happen. And that was tough, man. It was a real tough decision. And when I got home, for sure, I got a lot of guff from people. Not as much as I thought I might get. But I went home and I went to work. I continued writing that script. Scott finished his script first. He graduated with Dave, and then he finished a screenplay, and he sent it to me, and I was like, this is wild, man. Like, oh, I can't believe you're done. And I would have had a part as his American friend who, like, comes out, moves into his closet, and just writes all day long and stuff. Periodically, I come out. So it was real hoot, man. I was like, let's do this. This will be fun. Then I sent him Clerks because I finished it not too long after. And I'll never forget, Scott called me up, and he goes, we're making your movie. I said, what? No, we're making your movie. You went first. And he goes, this reads like a real screenplay. Like, this is crazy. He's going, how long have you been writing? And I was like, well, I started writing when I was like 11 years old. He goes, my God. He's like, you're just ready. Like, think about my script and think about this script. You're like, I can see this movie. Like mine, I'm hoping to find.
You're kind of known for your dialogue. Was it that grabbed him, or was it structure? What was it that impressed him?
Couldn't have been structural. I mean, we've all seen Clerks. It certainly wasn't that. Nor was it visionary. It must have been the dialogue. And I've been a big fan of Gregory MacDonald, who wrote a series of books on a character called Fletch. And so that he was very dialogue heavy in his work. Aside from being a big movie fan, dialogue was just something that, like, when I wrote, that's what I went to. It was something I could do. And I'd written sketches for the talent show in the high school and stuff. So I was kind of already practicing from like a younger age. So when I sat down to write Clerks, and I'd lived the convenience store life for many years and had plenty of ideas, I guess to Scott, it just read like more like something. He's like, this is ready. He's like, mine is not. Mine, we're going to have to figure it out as we go along, but like, let's do yours first. And so Scott from Vancouver helped arrange for the production of Clerks. It wasn't like, you're going to be the producer. We figured out he was producer like in post-production when we were driving up to the city to drop off our titles. All the titles in the movie, aside from the credits and stuff, there's like the big dictionary words in between each chapter of the movie. So I was just picking those out of a dictionary on our drive up to New York, and then writing everything down so we can hand it over to the titles guy. And then I said to Moj, I was like, what do we call you? And he's like, what do you mean? I was like, well, I'm writer-director. Dave is DP. Like, what are you? And he's like, well, I recorded the sound and I edited. And I was like, I'm not going to just say that you recorded the sound and edit. Like, you're a producer, right? Like, you were the guy that put the movie together. Even though we were shooting it in New Jersey, Scott would wake up at like 6 in the morning when, you know, it was 9 o'clock on the East Coast and start working the film Yellow Pages to like set up vendors for when he came out to New Jersey and we made Clerks. So I was like, I think that's what a producer does. Like, let's make you're the producer. And he was like, all right. And so boom, Scott became the producer at the last second before our credits were done. But Dave was also a VFS kid, and he was younger than us. If I was like 20, let me see, I saw Slacker on my 21st birthday, and I went to the VFS by the time by February after that. So August, September, October, November, December, January, February, 6 months later. So I was 22 years old. Dave, I think, was like 18. Like, he had just gotten out of high school, and instead of going to college, he wanted to be a DP. He's like, I'm going to go to this Vancouver Film School. And what attracted all of us, like, you know, kids today might not like be like, why this place? Why all the way out here? There are schools like this everywhere. That's the point. There was nothing like this, nothing. Like, now they got like the New York Film Academy and the LA Film Academy, and they're like 1-year programs and stuff, and they've got them everywhere. But VFS, I'm here to tell you, was absolutely first. So it attracted this international clientele. That was another great thing about the school, was like, you weren't going to school with the same people you saw your whole life. You were going to school with the world. It was a world school. Like, there was dude.
What's interesting is you're famously loyal to the crew that you work with, whether it be actors or crew. So you did have, it was an international base, but you've worked with the same people over the years. And my question is, was that, how much of that was out of necessity, and how much of that comes out of a sense of loyalty, and what are the benefits of that?
I think you know, a lot of people ask, like, or say on I don't want to sound like Trump, but I'm like, a lot of people are saying, I have seen people on my Instagram and on my Twitter over and over again ask me, like, or compliment me by saying, well, one of the things I like about you best is that you've got your friends with you, and you took them with you, and whatever you do, you bring them with you, and they've got their own things. Like, you're really loyal to those cats. And they make it sound like it's altruistic, but it's not. Part of it is, I guess, but like, it's just common sense. These people know me. And I'm trying to, in this business, I'm not trying to make money. I'm trying to make my dreams come true. And, you know, sometimes you got to have strangers around you to make that happen. But it always helps to have people around you who know who you are, who know how you think. People that made me who I am, I had to keep around. Like, y'all never met the real Kevin Smith. You met Kevin Smith plus Jason Mewes, plus Scott Mosier, plus Dave Klein, plus Brian Johnson, plus Walter Flanagan. I'm the sum total of all the people I met and took a little bit from and stuff. So Jason Mewes is one of your most famous collaborators. When does he come into the picture, and how does that relationship start? Jason I've known since pre-film school, obviously, going back to, let me see, probably 1989, 90 is when Mewes comes into my life. I worked at the Highlands Recreation Center. It was an after-school latchkey kids program where, you know, kids got home from school, but their parents were at work, so they come and hung out at the rec, and we play kickball with them, whip some pudding at them, and then send them home at like 6 o'clock because their parents pick them up. So that's where I met Walt and Brian and stuff. After I left that program after 1 year, because I just had a 1-year program job, Brian and Walter, my two friends, started talking about Jay incessantly because Jay had joined the program. And I was aware of Jason Mewes because we lived in a small town, and he had kind of an infamous relationship, like a very filthy Dennis the Menace. Like, there's that Mewes kid. He broke the window at Cumberland Farms. Or there's that Mewes kid. I hear he fucked a dog once, which wasn't true at all. But he was a figure of suburban myth and legend and stuff. So anyway, he was younger than us, and he started hanging out with Brian and Walt, and they were like, this kid's hysterical and stuff. They brought him into my world. I met him through those cats. Those cats eventually lost interest in Jason, and then Jason would just show up at my house. Like, and my mom would be like, that dirty boy from town is at the door. And I'd, well, who? And I'd go out, and it's like Jason Mewes. I was like, what are you doing here? And he's like, what are we doing today? And I was like, well, I mean, nothing. We don't do anything together. We are friends with Brian and Walt, but you and I aren't friends. You get it? And he's like, yeah, what are we doing today? So I kind of inherited him. And then I would bring him down to Quick Stop to work with me on Sunday mornings to put together the newspapers back when they had newspapers. You would have hundreds of newspapers on Sunday morning that had to be put together because they were in multiple sections. So you'd get up at like 5 in the morning to go do that. Jay was my only friend who would take the trip with me, man, for like $2. I was like, I'll give you $2. And he was like, all right. So we would go down to the store, make the newspapers, and then we looked for stuff to watch on TV. That's how we found Degrassi Junior High and Degrassi High, clicking around on PBS on a Sunday morning. There was nothing to watch, and we were like, what is this show? All these kids have a funny accent, man. This is goofy. And then all of a sudden, one of them was like, I'm getting an abortion, eh? And I was like, what show is this? These kids are having abortions. And then we fell in love with the Degrassi franchise and started watching it every week, bonded together over that, which years later we would wind up on Degrassi together, which is like, be careful what you wish for, kids. You may get it.
Wow. So he was your homie from back in the day. He hung up the quick stop, ended up being cast in the movie. And tell the people, how did the rest of the cast come together?
We did open auditions on Clerks. Like, I was going to play Randall myself. I wrote the role of Randall to play myself, which is why Randall has all the best jokes in the movie. I wasn't intending to play Silent Bob. I mean, I don't know if you follow my work, but I love the sound of my own voice. The notion, like now, that I one time chose to play the character that doesn't talk is ridiculous to me, because my natural condition is to flap my lips and stuff. So I thought I was going to play Randall, so we needed to cast other people, and we held an audition at the First Avenue Playhouse, a local dinner theater in Atlantic Highlands, which is a town between my town, Highlands, and Leonardo, where the convenience store is. And we just appealed to local actors. I hung up some notices around town in some cool places, and people came in. Brian O'Halloran was a person that came in through auditions, like he was in the local productions and stuff. He auditioned with a very Undante-like performance from Wait Until Dark. Marilyn came in through audition. She was a theater kid as well. And she cried in her audition, and we were all blown away. We were like, that's acting. So boom, she was instantly in. Jeff was a friend of mine from high school, and he had been coming into the video store right around the time that I was working on Clerks. And sometimes I'd have a big word processor there working on a big clunky 90s stuff. And he was like, what's this? You going to the moon? I said, no, I'm writing a screenplay. He goes, what are you kidding me? What do you mean, a screenplay? I said, yeah, man. I was telling him about it. And then one day he came in, and I said, hey, we're going to do auditions tonight. And some people we went to high school were going to be there. So I was like, Belly's going to be there. Belly, Mike Bellicose, is the guy who I had written Silent Bob for, and then I took the role away from him. He's the guy in Clerks who, like Dante goes, 37, my girlfriend sucked 37 dicks, and he goes, in a row? That was originally supposed to be Silent Bob. So since Belly was going to be at audition, Jeff was like, yeah, I'll go to see Belly, because he wasn't an acting kid. Jeff was never in the plays in school or anything. But he came down, and that night he auditioned. He didn't have anything to audition with, so we gave him Jay's sides, because Jay didn't show up. So I was like, I'm going to need a Jay, and it may not be Jay Muse, so why don't you read his part and stuff? And Jeff had such a natural delivery. So I called him like a few days later. I said, hey, man, can I come over to your house and read the script with you? I just got to hear it out loud. And he was like, all right. I came over, we read the script. I was like, I'm going to read Dante, and you just read Randall the whole time. He goes, okay. We got to the end of the script, and I was like, hey, man, would you play Randall? And he's like, I'm not an actor. That's a lot of dialogue. I was like, I know, but your voice is like perfect. Your delivery is everything, man. And like actor, and you're not an actor. I'm not a director. So what does it matter, man? Let's do this. So that's where Jeff came from. Jay I'd known forever, and since I'd known him, I was always like, somebody should put you in a movie one day. Like, man, I want to see if you're funny outside of New Jersey. I wonder if like people in California would find you funny. So when I figured out that I wanted to be a movie maker, I knew that I was the guy. I was like, I'm putting this guy in a movie, man. It was the smartest decision I ever make. He's a true American original, man. I hitched my wagon to his star, and he's taken me all over the world. So that's how we built the cast. 1993 is when we shot the movie. So it comes out in January of 94 is when we take it to Sundance. And
the story of the success of this movie that cost, I think it was $27,000 and you paid for it with credit cards. And it's interesting. In your Vancouver Film School application, I have a copy of it here that's so real, I had to block out your old address and phone number.
That's the one that I put up on my Instagram. If anyone wants to follow along, you can find it on my Instagram. But you can put the address. I don't live there anymore.
Okay, I didn't know if your family still lived there or whatever, but you mentioned Spike Lee as God, and I wondered, I know that Spike Lee famously, in his early movies, he would also fund things in a really unconventional way, credit cards. How much were you inspired by that sort of that punk rock, it doesn't matter, just go and do it mindset?
That was the only way I was ever going to make a movie. In fact, when I went to VFS, you guys hearing that fan? Sorry, it's so hot in here with the lights. Is it bad sound? All right. Oof. If I start sweating, kids, it's only because it's like 90 degrees here and the lights are real hot in the office. So wait, what was so I was never going to make a flick unless it was off of credit cards. And I only knew about credit cards as a possibility because Robert Townsend years ago made a movie called Hollywood Shuffle, very funny comedy.
I know it well.
That had like, yeah, right? It had Keenan Ivory Wayans in it, a bunch of folks, and hysterical flick. I remember hearing him give interviews where he talked about financing the movie partially on credit cards. And I was like, how is that possible? And he said he took cash advances against credit card, ran goods and services on the credit card. And I'd never heard that before. Like, really? You can use a credit card to pay to make a movie? And I had a bunch of credit cards, not because we came from money, quite the opposite. I came from a very poor family. Lower middle class, we used to like to call it, but it was poor. But I went to school, and I don't know if it's the same now with kids, but when I went to school, like at Brookdale Community College in New Jersey, they were always trying to get you to sign up for credit cards, man. So one day, me and Brian Johnson, my friend, I was like, let's have a race. Let's see who can get more credit cards. And he was like, all right, like, let's do it. So we would both fill in applications, but I'd fill in my application and say, I'm the manager of RST Video, which is the video store from Clerks and the one that I actually worked at. And I make $50,000 a year, which in 1990 was ridiculous. Like, you know, that nobody was making that kind of money to run a video store in 1990. So eventually the credit financial group calls up to do a credit check, right? And so they would call up RST Video and I was the only employee. So they would be like, we're doing a credit check on Kevin Smith. I was like, oh, he's my manager. I pay him $50,000 a year. And they're like, thank you. And I'd get a credit card in the mail. But I never used them because my parents were like, credit is the devil. So I just let them stack up in an envelope in my underwear drawer. So when I knew, like when I heard the Robert Townsend interview about like, he made a movie on credit cards, I was like, well, I do have credit cards. Like, you know, I wouldn't have to go out and try to find money because Sam Raimi, like, you know, I'd read books because there was no internet back then. But Sam Raimi, when he was making The Evil Dead, he went to a bunch of dentists, local dentists and doctors, and with, you know, his script and a financial plan and asked for like an investment of $1,000 to $5,000 and stuff. That's how he put his together. I didn't have the confidence to take Clerks to a bunch of dentists and be like, do you want to put money into this? It's 164 pages of dick jokes set in a convenience store. You know, do you want to hitch your wagon to my star? So I figured rely on self. Because it's always weird when you go out there and be like, I'm going to do something artistic. I'm going to self-express. And people are like, good for you. And then you're like, can I have money to do that? So as I began, I was like, I'll pay for it. It's something I want to say. I'll pay for it. And Richard Linklater had done Slacker and he had sold it to Orion Classics. So you could stop at the door. That's really distracting. So he had sold it to Orion Classics. So I knew there was a model. They would just leave it wide open. Open it. Just open it. Thank you. There was a model. He had gone through the process where he made a movie, a small distributor picked it up, and they put it in theaters and stuff. So I was like, oh my God, I can do what he did. He's a human being. I'm a human being. I saw Slacker. It's a wonderful movie, but at the same time, it was made by other human beings. So I think I could do what he did. And he was my role model. He was what I was kind of basing my journey on.
So this, of course, you came up pre-social media, and it's amazing to say I'm 40 myself, so kind of pre-internet. Now, would you still, to students listening today, would you recommend people going the credit card route? Like, we have so many different options to us. What would you tell students today that come from poor backgrounds? What should they do if they got a dream and they don't know how to get it done?
Well, now I'm an adult. who's like been married and has a kid, if I had the dream today, if all of a sudden I saw Slacker and I was like, I want to be a filmmaker, now I have people to think about, right? Like now I've got a family. Like, wait, what about that? What about my job? What about all these other things? When I, was struck like Saul on the road to Damascus by the voice of the film God, it was when I was living in my parents' house and I didn't pay rent and I had my own job, I had my own money and stuff, but like it was way easier to take the risk. I had no wife, had no kid, it was just me and my whole life was in front of me and my whole life was going to be about being a busboy or a waiter. So before I committed to that, I was just like, you know what? Let's give it a shot. Like I didn't think I was particularly talented, but I was like, the people who are making these indie films, like they're no different than me. They're just people. Like they've never done it before. This is their first time, and they're making interesting statements. Like maybe I can make a statement as well.
So a lot of our students are in the same place as early '90s Kevin Smith. So what would you tell them today?
Number one, as soon as you're done with film school, get back into the house with your parents. That way you could live off them while you make your flick, because you don't need expense upon expense. And it don't have to be your parents, but live with somebody for free. You can't be thinking about two things. You can't be going like, I'm going to make my movie while you're doing 9 to 5, man. Like it's tough. I had a perfect situation because I was shooting my movie where I worked. So I just didn't leave that building for 21 days. We'd sleep there and stuff like that. So not everyone gets to do that at their job. I would definitely advocate using credit cards because now it's way cheaper. When you tell people like we spent 27 grand making Clerks, they're like, what'd you spend the money on? Coke and whores? Like, where did it all go? Because nowadays you can make Clerks for about $1,000 or less on your iPhone, for heaven's sakes. So, now technology is in the hands of everybody and anybody can make a flick and make a flick that looks good. Problem is a lot tougher in terms of competition because now everybody can make a movie. But I would always advocate doing it on your own dime. That's just how I did it. I never felt comfortable like with Clerks asking somebody for help, for monetary help. I was like, if I'm going to do something this stupid, like, and it crashes and burns, this is on me. Like I got a $3,000 loan, cash loan from my parents when we had to rent the equipment because they didn't take a credit card and the whole production was about to fall apart and stuff. But I asked my money, I was like, I said, can I have $3,000? I know you don't have that kind of money. And they did. That was their entire life savings and shit. So they gave me $3,000 to rent the camera from Spira Corp and the editing machine, the Steenbeck. And then Scott's parents loaned us $3,000 on the back end to make a 16 millimeter answer print of the movie when we were done, because we'd run out of credit card room to put anything on. So I mostly on credit cards, but I had help from mom and dad, and we had help from Scott's mom and dad. Not tons, but everything in the world because I didn't have access to $3,000.
So in your book, Tough Shit, which I recommend everybody read if you haven't, it's pretty amazing. You talk about how film obviously is a very expensive art form, but you say that you knew really you were a storyteller, and that when you started your career, film was the chosen mode of expression. How did you discover which mode of expression you wanted to really focus on once you had some success in film? And because now you're a podcaster, you said that you make more as yourself public speaking than you do even filmmaking now. How did you figure these different hats out, and how did you choose which to focus on, or how do you decide what to focus on?
The same way I got into film, you just follow your passion. That's what it's all about. I just didn't want to have a real job. I lived with a man like my parents, my dad. He worked for the post office, and every day of his life, he hated his job. He hated it so much. And I didn't want to be that guy, and I wanted to take a shot. Like, I knew I was probably going to wind up being a person that did a job didn't want to do. But I was like, let me dream a little bit. Let me see if I could pull it off. And that came from passion and interest. Like I was into the idea of like making a film. And then film like put me in a place where I could express other interests. Like I'd been a big comic book fan. So suddenly because of film, I was adjacent to the comic book world, meeting people and being like, hey, can I write a comic book? I've always wanted to do that. And the key there was like, it wasn't about money. It wasn't like, oh, you're going to get paid a lot to write a comic book. I remember when I told my agent at the time, he was like, what do they pay you for that? I was like, $100 a page. And he's like, times 22 pages, that's $2,200. Why would you do that? And I'm like, why? Because I get to write a comic book. I get to write Daredevil. Like, what are you, nuts? So I've always followed the passions. I've always kind of, like, if I like it, I gravitate toward it, even if it doesn't pay any money. Podcasting, when I first got into it, was total hobby. It was like ham radio. You were just doing it and hoping that people would listen and stuff. And then the more people listen, the more it becomes expensive for you. I would always say podcasting's free. It's free to everybody who downloads it. It's not free to the person who's recording it if there's a lot of traffic on it. So because of that traffic hitting the podcast, we had to turn podcast into a business where I was like, well, let's start selling ads. And I think we had the first ads on a podcast. We did ads for Fleshlight for years. So I follow passions, and then I try to, and good or bad, turn them into my work. Because basically what I'm trying to do all around, and I think I've been okay at it so far, because this was not the plan. The plan was I wanted to be a filmmaker. But I kind of, somewhere along the way, I realized, like, well, making films is amazing, but like, if you really want to pull off an art project, make yourself the job. Like, what if it was just you? It's not you hiding behind a camera and being like, this is a fake story I told. What if, like, you know, you are you for a living, as opposed to I make films for a living? What if you were just Kevin Smith for a living? Because that would be the easiest job in the world. You know how to do that. You get up every day, you're going to do it anyway. So if you could just figure out how to get paid to be Kevin Smith for a living, that'd be great. And I aggregated toward that slowly. And now I do live a life where it's like, with the intro that you talked about, I'm like, wow, I've done a lot of weird things. But I owe that kid from, you know, the 21-year-old kid who went to see Slacker. Like, a lot of people go like, if you can give advice to that boy, who made Clerks, I would never give advice to that kid. Are you kidding me? I would ask him where he got the balls. Like, why did you think you could pull this off, man? Because I know us, and we were not equipped for this whatsoever. But that kid took a shot. Like, he dreamed and took a shot. And because he did, I get to live this life that I've lived for like 25 years. Not because of anything I've done. I mean, I try to maintain it. Sometimes well, sometimes not. Sometimes you make yoga hosers. You can't help it. But that kid put me here because he dreamed of being a filmmaker. He, like, and when I say dream, I don't mean like whimsy. Like, he would go to bed at night praying, because he was still Catholic, praying that he would be a director, recognized, acknowledged as a director, because in his head, he was already a director. He hadn't directed a movie yet. So he was just, that was the dream. And if I could go back now and tell him, like, while he's sitting there on his set, making Clerks for the first time, and I know that kid had doubts because he was like putting his own money into it, money that wasn't his on a credit card and stuff like that. I know he had doubts. If I went back in time, I would just tell that kid, keep on, man, because one day this dopey movie that you're making, like, it winds up in the Library of Congress, in the National Film Registry as a protected film. At one time in the future, if you stick to your passion right now, one day in the future, the government is going to deem your stupid little movie so important that they have to save it and stuff like that. That guy started me on the journey, but like, the only reason I spin all those plates is because once the doors opened up, I was like, well, here you have two choices. You become a master of your craft, and I knew that was never going to happen. I'm a master baiter at best, so I'm certainly not going to become Martin Scorsese. I was lucky to make a movie. So you could either concentrate on your craft and like win an Oscar one day, because that's the height of what we do supposedly, or I could do all the shit that just ever seemed fun to me. Like, I can write comic books. I could do a TV show like we did with Comic Book Men. I could just stand on a stage and pretend I'm a stand-up guy, like, because I loved Carlin growing up.
Your humility and your self-deprecation is why we love you. But not many people can.
I'm Canadian at heart.
That we know, but not many people can say that Quentin Tarantino watched their movie with them and geeked out and said they loved it. So I think you got to give yourself a little bit of credit as a filmmaker as well.
Believe me, I've had moments, and trust me, like, every time when we were on tour with Jay and Silent Bob Reboot, the road show, we toured at like 67 cities, 3 countries and stuff like that. every night I watched the movie with an audience of 1,000 people or more and stuff. People that got every joke, and some of them have been watching these movies since Clerks and stuff. And every night, like that 21-year-old kid who dreamed of being a filmmaker, like I got to show him his dream come true time and time again. Like that kid dreamed, not whimsied, but literally dreamed. When we were making Clerks, I remember young Kevin Smith saying out loud to Scott Mosier, wouldn't it be great if Jay and Silent Bob became like Cheech and Chong? Like people knew who they were and they had their own movies? That'd be nuts. And I literally live in that world. That's my fucking reality, because that kid dared to dream. That kid is everybody sitting here watching right now, watching me talk about it. That kid is you, man. The kid who is like, not full of piss and vinegar where he knew he would succeed. He didn't, trust me. He was not that cocky. But he knew that if he didn't try, that was the failure. Fuck dropping out of film school, man. I'd already dropped out of college in New York at one point. To not make the movie, that would have been the failure. Anything in life, there's no such thing as failure, man. Failure is just success training until you eventually get to the thing. Because once you accomplish the thing, there is no such thing as failure. And the only true failure is not doing the thing, when you know that you have the ability to do it, when you have no excuse not to, because you've seen other human beings do a similar fucking task and shit. That's the only failure. The failure is in not accomplishing the thing, whatever the thing is. In your cases, I assume it's you want to be a filmmaker. And I know that. I can smell it through the camera because I am you. And I was you then, and I am you now. Are you kidding me? Just because I've been doing it for years? Do you really think that I'm like, I've got this down? I still want to be a filmmaker. I still dream about touching people in a way, not physically, obviously, but with my art, in a way that like the masters touch my lives, in the way that like Quentin touched me and Scorsese and stuff. So even though I've done it a few times and I've had some varying success, trust me, I get up every day and I'm still that 21-year-old Kevin Smith, still just like y'all, who kind of go like, I dream about doing this. Making stories for a living, telling stories through any medium, whether it be film, whether it be podcasting, whether it be writing, whatever it is. That is so damn enviable to most people in the world, because that's why we get an audience, because not everybody could do that. And even the ones that can may not have enough confidence to try. What separates us, what makes us different from everyone else, is we know that we can do it. We know that we are storytellers, and we know that's what we're put in this world to do. We can express things for people that they cannot express for themselves. And I promise you, if you can say something for somebody that they cannot express themselves to the point where they're like, I've always felt that way. Or, oh, that's my jam. Oh, that is exactly. They will follow you for life. You will always have an audience to make films for, man. But what they're looking for is you, specifically you. They're done with me.
I've got to tell you on that note, your most recent film, Jay and Silent Bob Reboot, involved the best scene involving KKK members getting shit thrown on them. I've always wanted to do that, and you've inspired me, so shout out to you. Thank you for that.
Can I tell you a quick story about that real quick?
Sure, and then we got to go to the audience after, but tell me quick, and then we'll take some questions. Yeah.
The night we shot that scene, for those who haven't seen it in Jay and Silent Bob Reboot, at one point they run into the Klan. And my wife and my kid were like, you can't do this scene. And I was like, oh my God, in every classic road movie, they run into the Klan. And we're not lionizing them, we throw shit on them in our movie. And they're like, you can't get away with this. It's a different world. My daughter was like, this is a different world, Dad. And I was like, all right. And so when we got there, I was thinking about cutting the scene. And there was a kid on the show who was kind of a PA. And he came up to, I swear, it was so crazy. He came up to me and he goes, I just want to tell you, man, this is nuts. And I was like, what do you mean? He's just like, nobody does scenes like this anymore. He's like, I can't think of anyone in my generation that would write this. And that made me more scared. I was like, so maybe I shouldn't do it. And he goes, no, man, do it. He's going, it reminds me of the movies I grew up with, man. They had balls to them and stuff like that. And so it was the kid, some random kid, the PA on the movie, who kind of talked me into keeping that because I was chickening out at the last second and stuff. But, at the end of the day, it's worth the journey because you get to see shit sprayed all over those white outfits, man. It was really satisfying.
It was very satisfying. You and Tarantino, my favorite scenes involving racists. You know, him grabbing the whip in Django and you throwing shit in them was great. But let's jump to some questions from some aspiring young Kevin Smith. So we have here, Miles Benson says, my question for Kevin is, what does it mean to you to be named a creative ambassador of Vancouver Film School?
I mean, everything. Like here, on the practical level, it means that I got my tuition back. Number one, that's tremendous. Like every student should dream about that. The institution that they paid for their education being like, here you go. So there's that. Number two, to be called a creative anything is an honor. To be called a creative ambassador for the school that started me on the journey, that's simple. Like, as you said before, like, you know, I work with the same people all the time. Like, everyone comes along on the journey. Everyone was an essential part of the journey. VFS is where it all began. Without the VFS, I don't meet Scott Mosier. Without Scott Mosier, I never make a movie. Without Dave Klein, we don't have somebody to shoot all those movies and stuff. So being a creative ambassador for the VFS is incredibly easy and an honor. And it's something that I'm passionate about because I can, some places ask you to speak up on their behalf or whatnot. In this case, I can speak knowledgeably. Like, I came through the school. Like, I'm a product of that school, and I do have a career. So if that helps anyone give a listen and like head over to the school, like one more person go, well, it worked out for him. And now then they'll join. And VFS has incredibly diversified from when I joined. You know, we just literally all we had was the film program. Now there are a bunch of different programs at VFS. So it's honestly like, and I'm not overselling it just because we're talking to VFS people, like, it is an honor. I want to go back in time and tell that scared kid when he gets off the plane, you know, in Washington and drives up to Vancouver with his brother, that like, don't worry. One day, like, you're gonna be involved with the school for the rest of your life.
Another question. Thank you for that. Amy Louise Aronal Crabtree says, please expand on your experience with writing female roles as strong leads out of the ordinary as we see in typical rom-coms.
Ooh, thank you. I've always been surrounded by incredibly strong women, and I've always kind of looked for that. I'm a pretty weak-willed individual who doesn't know who he is in life and is still trying to figure it out. I like to be surrounded by people who know exactly who the fuck they are, and historically, I've always found that to be women. You know, so I've been surrounded. My mom was a strong woman. I had strong girlfriends all through high school. Their mothers were strong. My sister was strong. My nuns, the nuns who taught me, the Franciscan sisters of the infant Jesus, they were not meek Jesus freaks. They were pretty, they knew exactly who they were and stuff like that. So when I wrote girls or women in my scripts, they sounded like all the women that I knew. Like you know, some people are like, oh, all your characters sound like you, which somehow people think is a criticism and stuff. But I always took that as a badge of honor because I'm like, yeah, well, all David Mamet's characters sound like David Mamet, you know, and all the Coen brothers characters sound like the Coen brothers. But for me, I tried to make all the women in my movies sound like the women in my life. That's why they're always kind of heads on straight and the smartest ones in the room and stuff, and guys are playing catch up. So I've been, you know, some people have dismissed me saying like his girls don't sound like girls, they just sound like him. But I'd say all my characters sound like me because they all espouse my theories, beliefs, and the things I think and feel and stuff. But the women don't sound like me in my mind as much as they sound like Kim Loughran, Jennifer Schwalbach, Sister Teresa, Grace Smith, my mom. Like, that's where I pull all those voices from. Those are the female voices that shaped me, not just adults, but kids my age.
Now we have a kind of a technical film question that I think young Kevin might laugh at this, but Alex Clark says, how much time do you spend outlining a screenplay before actually writing it? How long are your outlines usually?
Alex, I'm gonna be honest with you, I'd never outline. That sounds like work. And anytime the art gets too close to work for me, that's when I bow out. That's when it's not worth the time and the effort and stuff. And I'm not saying I don't work at all and stuff. I work, but when you're doing what you love and when you're passionate about it, it never feels like work, even if you're doing it for 24 hours, 6 months straight or something like that. But an outline feels like work. So I just kind of go at it. For example, I'll use, let me see. I just finished the script for Twilight of the Mallrats. So it's a Mallrats sequel. I was on page 1 on December 28th, and then up until like 2 weeks ago, I was on page 60 for months, just revising. I basically write forward, and then when I stop, go about life. When I come back, roll a joint, I'm like, all right, I'm going to read what I wrote again and then add new stuff. And invariably, I start changing what I've already done. So I constantly revise in the draft. So honestly, like, my first drafts are pretty shootable, like, you know, especially at this age, because I've been around long enough and I've done this enough times, and I could see the fat in a movie and cut it out early, because as a guy who finances his movies sometimes as well, and, you know, is always asking for people for money, I don't want to shoot anything that I don't wind up using. And since I'm the editor, I know everything that I'm going to wind up cutting in. I'm not an editor or a director who shoots the movie and I'm like, I'll figure it out in the editing room. I shoot it like a puzzle, like that can be easily put together. I'm not even saying I'm a good editor, but I know how to put my stuff together. So when I write, I just go at it and until it's done. And I have a general idea of where I'm going. Like, I always knew where Twilight of the Mallrats would kind of quasi-end, not the specifics. They'll get revealed to you as you write along. And I'm not saying don't outline. Smart money outlines, smart students outlines, great filmmakers probably outline. I just never did. It seemed like too much work. I like to more shoot from the hip and stuff.
So now a comment and then a final question here. So we have a lot of scholarship winners here tonight. And thank you so much for helping those people out. And we have a quote here.
That is so awesome. I'm happy to be such a small part of it. But yeah, that's really cool.
Here's a quote from one such scholarship winner. This is Miles Benson. He said, "I just want to say a huge thank you for your scholarship to VFS. I needed to win, and it significantly changed my life for the better. It really gave me a leg up that I needed in life. I hope this opportunity gives me a chance to someday repay him."
It's really fucking sweet, man. It's shit like that, honestly. Like, you know, I'm a bit of a stoner, so everything is fucking emo. I'm emo about everything, and everything makes me emotional. But that really does it for me, because I hear young Kevin Smith in that letter, man. Like, for whatever reason, this kid was going to have an issue getting out here, and he has all the spit and fire of everybody else, of all of us, the passion, the fire in the belly of, like, I want to tell my story. And sometimes we're thwarted by our conditions in life, where we are, what we have, or more importantly, what we don't have. So to help any artist, to see any artist get one step closer to their self-expression, man, because that's what we need in this life. More people like that. There's two paths in this world. There's destruction and there's creation. And the destruction path is busy as hell, because it's very easy to tear shit down, and it's very easy to be negative, and it's very easy to snipe from the sidelines and tell people they suck. Creation lanes are wide open, man, because it takes a little. You have to put something of yourself out there, and not everyone's willing to do that. So if you pick creation, you will travel free and easy. If you pick destruction, you're going to be with everybody else who just wants to break shit down. Always choose the creation path, and this kid did, man. The fact that he's there, that he's working on it, that the scholarship helped it all, like, that did it for me, man. Thank you.
And now I want to read you just one final thing. And this is something that you said. You said, this is about 10 years ago, "In the face of such hopelessness as our eventual unavoidable death, there was little sense in not at least trying to accomplish all of your wildest dreams in life." And what I want to ask you is, as a person who seems to have accomplished nearly everything on their bucket list and a few other people's bucket list, what is left for you? And in these times of uncertainty and global pandemic, what do you want to achieve, and what do you hope to inspire others to achieve?
I don't know. See, I'm living on borrowed time. I was supposed to be dead like 2 years ago from that heart attack and stuff. The chances that I make it out of that situation were only 20%. So, you know, the fact that I'm here, I'd kind of gone through a death acceptance. Like, while I was on the table, I was like, well, you've had a great run and you did a lot of cool things in your life. So if this is the end, just push back from the table. You know, don't be that jerk who's the last one at the party who's like, hey man, you got any more beer? Like, just go home. Like, go back. Like, you had your fun. This was great, but now it's done. And then the doctor saved my life. So suddenly I'm like, everything is borrowed time to me, because in my head I should be dead, or I did die and stuff like that. So all of this is just extra. This is free house money to play on. So now there's less pressure. I've never felt pressure, to be honest with you. You know, if you are yourself for a living, it's pretty pressure free, because they can't really compare you to anybody else. They could compare me to other directors, sure, but Are they going to compare me to other directors who've made a bunch of movies set in one universe that are all tied together and made a sequel 20 years after the original to one of the dopey movies? Like, Kevin Smith's career is stupid, but it's uniquely Kevin Smith's career and stuff. So I got that for me. I mean, that's kind of carved out a little bit and stuff, but at the same time, I got to kind of go out and do other things, spin other plates and whatnot, try other things. What was the original question? I'm sorry, I went way off base.
No, it was just what you hope to accomplish next. And I think
Oh, that's it. So I got to finish it. All right, what do I want to accomplish next? I don't know. Like, I used to say, I guess more of the same. Like, it'd be nice to keep making movies. I never get like, one day I want to make a big movie. Not at all. I don't want to make a comic book movie. I love them, but I have no interest in making them and stuff. I like going up to Vancouver shooting the CW shows. That's as close as I get to like a comic book thing, because you're in and out in 9 days, and that's my speed. The Russo brothers took like a year to make those Avengers movies, and I love those movies, but who's got a year? So for me, I'm a fan of that stuff, so I don't think about, one day I'll make a bigger movie and stuff. Honestly, like doing it, like in terms of covering all grounds, it'd be nice to do a musical one day, like theater, like a live show. I do a lot of live shows, but not, with a script or anything like that, just standing on stage. So it'd be kind of fun to do one of those. But for me, now I'm in this weird zone of like, oh, since I lived and I've got time to spare, now I'm kind of passionate about going back and revisiting my old characters, my old toys. I built a little universe, the Askew universe, and then put it away a while ago. And then now, in a world where universe building is trendy and stuff like that, I enjoy going back and playing with the old characters. Hence Jay and Silent Bob reboot, hence Mallrats, Twilight of the Mallrats, hence the forthcoming Clerks 3. And I know that doesn't sound very, original for a lot of cats. Some cats might be like, what happened to you, man? Now you're just doing sequels to your old shit. Where's the fire? I would quickly point out that, like, I was fiercely original a couple years ago when I made a movie about a guy who turns another guy into a walrus, and everybody was mad at me. And they were like, go back to the other movies. So I said, okay. So now I'm going to play with my old toys for a little bit and see if I can update the movies and correct mistakes that I see from the past, just to see how possible it is. And then there is this one TV show that we're working on I've talked about it. It may not happen, but we're going out to pitch it in 2 weeks. Essentially, it's like the story of how we made Clerks. And one of the seasons, season 2, would be, half of it would take place in Vancouver, because I have to go to Vancouver to film school and I have to meet Scott Mosier. So we're working on a project. For me, Clerks is like my magic word. Not a day has gone by since I made that movie where I don't utter the word Clerks somewhere to somebody. And the reason people even still remember my name is because I won't let them fucking forget. I'm like, remember me? I made Clerks once. And like, all right, you're the Clerks guy. You're the Clerks guy and stuff.
Well, Kevin, you have, as you know, you have a ton of fans in Vancouver and a Vancouver Film School. So just on behalf of Vancouver Film School and everybody in Vancouver, thank you so much for spending time with us today. Please stay healthy. You're someone that we must protect at all costs, and we look forward to seeing you on campus soon.
Omar, thank you so much, man. Next time we all do this, we do it in person and we do it for 4 hours. I promise.
I'd love to. We'll go Rogan style.
Yes.
All right. Thank you so much.
VFS forever, kids.